Hello, today let's talk about FiiO K9 Pro, their flagship desktop headphone amplifier and digital to analog converter. As many of you probably aware, they first released version based on the AK4499 chip, and that batch of K9 Pros was limited because not many Z4499 chips left. And later FiiO released the version with dual ES9038 with slightly improved characteristics and also slightly higher price. But today I want to talk about Asahi Kasei version because I use it for a few months already, and the ESS version is still in the process of delivery to me. So consider this as a foreplay before the review of second version of K9 Pro, because even this version is really promising. FiiO developed this device for a really long time. They showed some draft examples of design, they changed the specifications a few times, but finally it was ready and it was delivered, and it appeared to be pretty powerful and especially for that price. It has lots of inputs and outputs, including Bluetooth. It supports MQA rendering, as amplification here used the THX solution, and output power is up to 1900 milliwatts for 32 ohms load from single-ended output, and up to, I don't remember exact figure, 1 or 2000 milliwatts for 300 ohms load from the balanced output, or in other by other measurement 46 volts peak to peak. So pretty powerful device that can drive almost all full-size headphones. But actually I already mentioned price, basic specification, so let's have a closer look. As you can see, box is pretty nice, it stands out from typical recycled cardboard, and inside was this warning about proper voltage selection, digital to analog converter itself, and accessories. But as I'm using this digital to analog converter for quite a long time, this box is empty, and let's proceed to the design. So here is K9 Pro with stock accessories. You'll get USB cable, you'll get power cord, 6.3mm adapter, and Bluetooth antenna that already connected. It's made of metal and it's pretty heavy. Design is fairly basic and close to minimalistic, with just few bevels and edges to add a bit of character to this device. It's really compact, especially comparing with some other digital to analog converters, but at the same time pretty heavy, so you know it feels really dense with high weight to volume ratio. And there are a bunch of controls, but let's look first at this side. Here is USB in. You can use USB Type-C cable to connect some source like player or smartphone. It's really convenient to use for fast connection of some portable transport. At the bottom here is a voltage switch. By default you probably won't need to change it, and the rubber fit that provides a good fixation on the table. On the back panel here is power socket with on-off toggle and fuse, and inputs: Bluetooth with antenna, coaxial, optical, and USB, and analog outputs and input. So you'll get line in 4.4mm to connect some player, for example, and double RCA to connect some external digital to analog converter if you'd like to use it, and line out RCA and balanced. So as you can see, in terms of connectivity, it's absolutely universal device. On the front panel here are 3 outputs: balanced pentacon, single-ended 6.3mm, and XLR. And volume knob, really smoothly rotating, really nice and fun to operate, and here used some good potentiometer because there is no noise or something like that. I assume that FiiO used the typical hybrid schema. And here are 3 buttons and toggles: on, off, input selector, gain 3 level toggle, and output mode, headphone, preamplifier, and digital to analog converter. So you can select whatever you like. Let's connect the power and flip the switch, so it will boot up, and by default it's waiting for USB connection, but pressing the input selector cycles them one by one, and you can turn it off by long pressing the power button on the front panel. Really convenient that you don't have to toggle the switch on the back side, you can just switch it off. And when it's on, indicator ring is glowing around the volume knob. It's not bright, and it can change colors based on the signal resolution, MQA, and so on. So, to summarize this part, as you can see, by design it's a really good device. And pretty obviously FiiO added Bluetooth remote control features, so you can use FiiO Music as a companion app. You just launch it, go to the settings, and in the Bluetooth device control you can select FiiO K9 Pro. It will connect to it, read basic information, and here you can change some settings. So device photo, information about it. Here you can see Bluetooth version. Actually there are 2 versions, version of Bluetooth chip used here, or Bluetooth firmware, and the version of USB firmware that will be shown if you connect it. You can set custom device name, upgrade firmware, Bluetooth one, clear pairing, restore to default settings, and system standby. It's kind of similar to pressing this button, I think. And here you can select indicator pattern if you want off, default, or you can toggle it to multicolor gradient. You can select what Bluetooth codecs you want to support, or actually not you, but the device. And you can select default input: USB, optical, coaxial, line, and Bluetooth. There is an equalizer. Actually, the equalizer is for Bluetooth mode. It won't be used in the USB or some other modes. And in audio settings you can select channel balance, and you can select one of the few available low-pass filters for a 4499 digital to analog converter. And also here it will download manual, but I disconnect player from the Wi-Fi. As you can see, companion app is fairly basic, but it helps you to tweak some settings. And of course, about the sound, for illustration purpose I built improvised setup with FiiO M17 as a transport. It's connected currently via Bluetooth using LDAC codec, but of course it won't give the full potential. So for testing I used USB connection, but here it's just for illustration purpose, so I think Bluetooth is okay here in this case. And as the headphones in this pair, I decided to use the cans that I actively use with this digital to analog converter for more than a month. Actually, it's my current work setup that I use working on code, and it's a Meze Lyric. Really, I really like this combination of this digital to analog converter and these headphones. Later I will explain why, but you can probably already guess. It's a pretty natural model, but here used AK4499 with and this digital to analog converter has that sound that is typical for that AKM chips. Natural, technical, but with a slight hint of added weight and with slight hint of what is called musical representation, with slight emphasis on vocals and macro dynamics. Actually, if you like, or if you heard FiiO M15, you can get an idea of sound of this digital to analog converter. It's pretty close, but slightly more technical, and of course with better control because of higher amplification. I have a gut feeling that K9 Pro created for the M15 lovers. So, low frequencies of course go to maximum depth, they are controlled really well, they have a small tiny hint of added weight, really small and tiny. It doesn't spoil the dynamics, it doesn't spoil the texturing, because texturing is really great here. Just a bit more, a bit of added solidness probably for the low frequencies. And of course they have nice impact, they have good texturing, and they play small nuances and overtones also nicely. And as a first example of low frequencies, I will take Musica Nuda, Game of Taking Chances, from Banda Larga album with a lot of instruments, but of course double bass here plays the main role, and it starts from the beginning really good, really realistic sense of strings, and at the same time actually I can't call this vocal, but heavy breath of Petra Magoni accompanies that low frequencies, and it gives a nice interesting effect. And the second example, it's Pain of Salvation from their acoustic album To the Shoreline. This time I decided not to take some electronic music example, because obviously this digital tonal converter will deal with it without any effort. And To the Shoreline, they have nice bass and pretty dense drums that also goes pretty deep to the low frequencies area, and this digital tonal converter played really nicely. Of course, with wireless connection you're losing a bit of depth, but in USB mode won't be such issues. Mid frequencies are detailed but not focused on the micro contrast. It's not the device for those who need absolutely natural and monitoring representation. Most probably such device will be second version with 9038, but it's just my assumption, so without hearing it's hard to say. So, but still resolution of course is pretty good, and the same applies to the realism of instruments and vocal representation, but thanks to AKM signature sound, vocals are moved slightly forward, and it helps build better stage in depth, so depth is really good here. Width is also really nice, but depth is even better because of that highlighting. But at the same time, device doesn't add additional emotions. When they are present in record, they will be played nicely, but for the poorly recorded and mastered stuff, it won't add something by itself. And at the same time, slight hint of added weight gives a better body for the instruments and vocals. And the first example, actually, Annihilator, my precious Lunatic Asylum, good example of a really fast metal track, and this digital tonal converter plays it in a pretty nice way with enough of speed, but at the same time drums and bass line is really weighty and have a good presence. And second example, it's Northern Kings. I really like this super project or super group with best vocalists in the history of Scandinavic, or it's even Finnish heavy metal, and the cover version of Brothers in Arms here is simply fantastic, with great orchestral part, with great instrumentation, and with really good vocals, and all that things are rendered nicely by this digital to analog converter, and that slight highlighting of vocal really gives additional liveness to this track. And treble just without any coloration, with good extension, above average, not super above, but noticeably above average. Normal layering, also not superb, but done normally, and with good overtone saturation. Basically it's just correct treble representation. They are not boosted, not recessed, not softened, nothing like that. Basically it's just a fair representation of treble as it is. And first example, it's Pink Floyd, Marooned, really atmospheric track, typical for the late Gilmour era, and I like it. That introduction with birds and other effects sounds really spacious, and thanks to the good treble performance here, it's really realistic. And second example for the treble, it's Snarky Puppy, Gemini. Actually, it's a good test track for all parts of sonic spectrum, starting from bass and ending with treble, but of course it's here for the treble with all that percussions and cymbals that are present on this track. This digital tonal converter shows a really good performance. Speaking about pairings, actually it's really universal. Background noise is surprisingly low on the low gain, of course, so with in-ear monitors there won't be much issues. Maybe with super sensitive ones, of course, volume will become high too fast, but still it's not the device for super sensitive in-ear monitors. But actually I tried Campfire audio models with iFi IE match, absolutely zero problems. I recommend you IE match if you want to listen to sensitive in-ear monitors with some desktop devices. And as for difference of outputs, I've seen some measurements in the internet that shows that they are really different. But on the headphones that I've tested, difference wasn't huge. I tried different cables for lyric, and the difference of for the balanced output, it's slightly wider stage and slightly more refined treble. But actually I won't call that difference big, because during blind tests I was barely distinguishing that connections. Of course, if that tests were made volume matched. And as for comparisons, to be honest, I don't have similar digital tonal converters in this price range. I've tested some SMSL, topping and other devices with a slightly more affordable price, but to my ears FiiO K9 Pro sounds more dynamic and slightly more musical. And actually my main my main desktop digital tonal converter is Ulong DA10, and it's slightly more natural, but in terms of levels they are about the same. So that's all I want to tell about the K9 Pro AKM version, and I'm waiting for ESS Sabre 1 with impatience. Thank you for listening, thank you for your attention, and of course have a nice day.